All right, I will kick us off. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. As I mentioned, if you're coming in and haven't been paying attention, I'm Carl Hughes with Draft.dev. I kind of oversee the whole show here, but a lot of it involves getting to know clients and other people in the industry just to keep up with where things are going. And so a topic I was really interested to dive into is differentiation. I'll just kind of, the quick background is I've seen a lot of saturation in the dev tooling space, even in the last 5 years, as I've gotten really in deep with it, and a lot of companies that we've worked with where, it used to be that several years ago, if you had a logging tool for Kubernetes that was pretty novel, and now there are like 50 of them at KubeCon every year. And there's, no shade on that. That's just something that happens. But I think what's interesting is it's getting harder and harder to stand out as a developer tool just because you're a developer tool and just because you have an innovative and cool solution. So Andres Valero and Trent Blakely, I guess I'll call on you guys one-on-one. Andres, you're first on my screen, so I will pick you first to start. Andres, you are the principal technical marketing manager at SUSE, and you're calling in from Spain. So give us a little bit more detail on your job and what you do day to day, and give us the intro bit there.
Well, my day-to-day job is basically trying to create content and demos and help people understand how SUSE can help them. Right now, I'm focused on the telco and the edge space, but I've been working on the Kubernetes side of things for a fair amount of time. And basically, that's my main goal. Also, help with competitive material and a little bit of we are not a huge company, so we have to do a little bit of everything. So a little bit of competitive product marketing. So that's basically, but the main focus is doing technical content.
Okay, great. And then Trent, give us a little rundown on your role at Console Connect and actually the parent company, PCCW Global, but you can kind of, give us a little the high level here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the head of product marketing over here. Been here for about 1.5 years, but been in the space of telecom for over 10 years now. In a nutshell, what we do is we make it so that the network experience you have, the infrastructure network experience you have, can match your cloud experience. So we like to call it network as a service. Think infrastructure as code meets telecom. And that's it in a nutshell. We also have kind of a large and more broad portfolio of network services, that you think of most ISPs would have.
Okay.
But kind of bringing that into the modern era, my role mainly focuses on competitive intel, some analyst relations, positioning, audience segmentation, that sort of thing.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you guys some slightly more probing introductory questions that are more fun because that, telling me a job title, we could look that up on LinkedIn. I don't think that's exciting. But Andres, you started your life as a career computer salesman. How did you get into
Yes.
technical content at SUSE? Like, what's the pathway there? And you were at Red Hat before that as well, so I know you've been around tech for a bit now. And not, I mean, computer salesman is tech, but it's a very different side of it. So, what was your
Well,
path here?
basically, when I was 20, well, the common thing, my parents got divorced. We didn't have much money. We needed help. So I left university. I went for a job and, well, I started doing that. And a point in my life, I thought, okay, if someone else tells me again that I'm not getting paid to think, I will end in jail. So I managed. I came back to university, finished my degree. I'm supposed to be an industrial engineer, which I'm not. And I was being like a Linux geek and computer geek, so I ended doing consultancy for Capgemini. And well, one day there was an opportunity to join Red Hat. I've been a solution architect, and after COVID, I needed to switch gears and do something different. I had the opportunity to join SUSE and do technical marketing, and I've been doing this for the almost the last 4 years.
Very cool. Yeah, I love the varied backgrounds of people in tech. I am a trained mechanical engineer, a degree at which I've not really used as a since college. So I'm right there with you, the industrial engineering. Trent, I you mentioned on LinkedIn that you've coached, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but you've coached a couple hundred plus people on product management and product marketing. Um, how do you do that? How do you get into that? Like that's it's such a cool thing to be able to say you've done. What draws you to that, or why the coaching?
I think it all stems from just wanting to be a lifelong learner and then having the opportunity sort of falling into product management, getting really, really lucky to have a great hiring manager who saw potential in me and then taught me the ropes. And then from there became very passionate about it, started participating in a lot of groups, whether it's on Reddit or local groups here in Colorado. Just associating with a lot of peers, meeting people who were trying to break into the industry. I think that was especially common several years back. And I thought, I'm in a good position to give back or pay it forward if you think that way. And I just really enjoyed it. Mostly would just run into people or people would get sent my way and, share resources, share tips and tricks.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that. I mean, anybody who's a natural helper, I appreciate that and applaud you for that because we always, yeah, it's good to be out here in tech. It's great that we've got the roles we do and we've learned what we have, but like let's build everybody else around us up too while we're at it. Well, cool. Let's get into the meat of the conversation then. Okay, so I kind of alluded to this at the top, but one thing I've really noticed in the last 5 years is just a lot more interest in developer tools. A lot of them have moved from open source first and only to now they're actual products that are paid and have real teams and real sales behind them. And the spaces of all types are pretty saturated. Even some of these emerging tech areas where it's like maybe AI based coding tools and things like that's still pretty complicated market to break into because there's so many of them. There's a lot of noise around it. So my first question to kind of get into this is what have you guys noticed about positioning, marketing yourself, and kind of like getting noticed in this space in the last few years of your career? What's changed? What's shifted? What's something that you're paying attention to now you didn't used to? What's something that you're observing is different than in 5, 10 years ago?
Hmm. I can go first here, maybe.
Yeah, please.
I think the idea of creating a community around your product is not new, but the distinction that came to mind when you asked that was that people, especially developers, tend to be kind of skeptical and a little guarded, especially when a brand comes forward and says, "Hey, look at us, we're this brand. This is what we do, what we're known for." It can be hard to create momentum with that. So the shift from company-led branding and marketing to more individual-led, I see more and more founders getting, going all in on thought leadership and creating that persona and that personal brand that then gets associated to the company by default.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but
Mm.
I see so much of that on LinkedIn, even at bigger companies. I think that used to be like a thing that startups could do to stand out because their founders were a little more personally involved in things. But even now, I see at much larger companies where the CEO is still out there kind of being a dev advocate, for lack of a better term, just kind of a simple term way to put it. How about you, Andres? Anything you're noticing that's changed in positioning and product marketing there?
What I notice is that no longer can you can go and say this is a developers first or developer oriented. This no longer works. I'm married to a developer, so I know what I'm talking about. And they are skeptical by nature, like Trent said. They want to try things, and so first of all, don't oversell. Offer your product. Try to differentiate. Try to explain them how your product can help them and let them try. And also, what Trent said, community, having a community behind your product of people that are using it, it gives you credibility. And
Yeah.
and that's so important for developers. For instance, you have, in my case, go and check K3S. Which developer doesn't know K3S? Which developer never used K3S? None. All of them use that. It's simple. It has a good community. You have a problem, you find information. So I think nowadays it's be truthful, explain the value, don't oversell, And if you can have a community, that will help you 100%.
For sure. Yeah, there's some interesting, and I don't have this data offhand. I should have dug it up before, but there's some interesting data that I think the Developer Marketing Alliance has done about how many times a developer needs to have heard of a product before they actually like sort of bring it into their workflow. And often you're right, Andres, it's not only hearing about it in their community networks and at conferences and maybe ads and maybe blog posts and maybe this, but it's also like, I want to go try it or at least see the demo of what it looks like in practice and probably get my hands dirty and try it for certain use cases. I want to build a little side project with it. And then eventually I want to talk to my boss about maybe bringing it in. And it's that long adoption cycle is something that I think a lot of people in marketing get really thrown off by because in some other SaaS tools, it can be very quick to just, hey, try this little $10.99 a month tool and no problem. It can be fast adoption cycles. Very hard to pull that off in developer tools because we're skeptical, we're precious with our time, we're nervous about security and whatever, all these other reasons. So very good points and things to bring up. When it comes to differentiation, I see a lot of different things that people are trying to do, and I think some of them are good and some are bad, but I want to hear from you guys. What are the mistakes that you see companies making of all sizes when it comes to like standing out and differentiating to developers? What are they missing? What are the things that people are really screwing up here?
Well, if I can go with this one.
Please, yeah.
And
I should call on you guys,
I'm
but I'll let you kind of go as a
I'm going to
comes you.
repeat a little bit myself, but don't go and try to again oversell and not be honest. This never works with them. So all developers I've met, or most of them, are really, really smart people. So if you want them to trust you and to be different, go and make sure that, first of all, don't oversell. Second, make sure that you're adding value or somehow saving them time on their process, because all developers, they have their own process for working, for pushing code, for whatever. If you're able to improve that workflow for them, make their life simpler, and you are able to somehow show that in a demo, in a short video, that will help you tremendously because they immediately will notice the value. But if you're trying to, let's say, cheat them or trick them into something that is not real, they will spot you in 1,000 miles. So
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
would say in this regard.
I think that's a really good point. It brings up something I was going to mention, which is often remembering what developers' true incentives are is an important thing here. And what you said there, Andres, is very true. It's like I'm going to say we because I was a former developer too. We're lazy. We don't want to do the same thing over and over again. It's not really laziness. It's more of a we hate repetitive tasks because our whole job is automating way repetitive things. And so appealing to that sense of not wanting to do repetitive tasks or laziness or whatever you want to call it is a super important tool and a good leverage point for developers. What doesn't move the needle, and I think this is where the mistake is, often people will try to sell things like cost savings. Well, I'm a developer. It's not my job to save the company money. I'm not saying I don't care at all. I'm just saying like that's not my role here. My role here is to produce more and do output and focus on the product being better and more sticky and whatever. So it's very, again, when you have that like if your product saves money on cost, great, but you're probably not going to resonate with that messaging to developers. You got to find a way to make that something they care about. And so again, just thinking about what do developers really care about, they want security, they want speed, they want to not do the same thing over and over again. They want to make their lives simpler, as you say, Andres. Very important to lean into those things. So I think that's a really good point. Trent, anything to add there on, what mistakes you see people making when it comes to differentiating or reaching developers?
Yeah, I think it's kind of 2 points. I guess they kind of go together. The main crux of it is skipping discovery or truly understanding your audience at a deeper level. I mean, we generalize it's a broad category, developers, right? What kind of developer are we talking about?
Yeah.
Is it front end? Is it back end? Is it,
Very
what's
true.
the code being used for, right? I think, yeah, like you're saying, getting to that granular level where you understand more about their workflow, what they truly care about, like the psychographics element of who you're talking to, of your audience, that can make all the difference in what translates to your actual messaging. And then along with that, it's sticking with it for enough time to where you establish kind of a voice and a brand, and again, the recognition of a brand, you have to hear it a number of times. But if they're hearing very different messages from one time to the next, it can get lost, and that you're not building resonance, you're not building momentum. If you go after, like, I see way too many people trying to cause virality, make this post go viral, right? It just, that rarely, if ever, happens.
Yeah.
So to have that be your goal, I think is misguided. It's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't want to flash them in the pan. You want a slow burn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, look, virality will happen every now and then. You'll get lucky, right? And I think that's fine. It's like nothing wrong with that. But if your whole marketing plan is going viral, like, it's a pretty weak plan, right? And it's pretty loose. One thing that kind of is a follow-up here, because this comes up a lot with our clients and people we talk with, is uh, a lot of our contacts are non-technical marketing people, and they're being tasked with marketing and positioning and branding a very technical product. And the things we're talking about here seem maybe obvious to us because we've worked around these deep tech tools, and I've been a developer, so some of this makes sense to me. But like, someone who's in marketing and maybe very experienced in marketing may come into this market and really get blindsided by this. How do you get to really understand the needs that your product solves? Like, what are the things you can do as a non-technical marketer to really understand the pain points and the way to talk about this in a way that will actually resonate?
You want to go?
I'll go real quick, Andres, and then you can pile on. I think it starts with stories, and wherever you can, getting exposure to their worldview and their life. Like, the ideal circumstance is kind of what Intuit did back in the day with their QuickBooks software, right? They would go to their user's house and sit next to them as they use the software. So, like, the more you can get close to that, that's not reasonable and practical in today's day and age, but you know, observing their experience with the software from end to end, including maybe even what they did right before they started using your software, what caused them to start using your software. That can be incredibly insightful, even for a non-technical person, because then it gives them the opportunity to ask, why do you do it like that? Or what else did you think about before you decided to do this? And you can pursue all these different angles. I love the jobs to be done methodology for that.
Yeah, that's great. Andres, did you anything to add or anything that strikes you?
Yes, something that I think always helped me in the past is reading the win-loss analysis. It's
Yeah,
enlightening.
let's talk about that more. What is the win-loss analysis? Because I don't personally know that term.
Basically, we have once we close a deal or don't close a deal with a customer, there is a company that works for us that interview the customer. Why you did hire the product? Why you don't hire the product? What is the pain points is solving for you? What is not solving for you? And that can be really, really enlightening and sometimes even hurtful, because you realize that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I can imagine you have to have thick skin for that, but that's a really great insight because, yeah, as somebody who I'm doing calls with customers and prospects a lot of the day, I want feedback, like, candidly. Like, I know it's hard to hear sometimes, and sometimes I get negative feedback, and that's like part of it, but it also only is going to help me get better if I hear it. And if you don't hear it, you're living under a rock. I think both you guys' answers hits on what I would say, which is exactly in line, is you need to find more ways to get more touch points with the customer. And whether that's an internal person who uses the tool that can just walk you through it, or even an engineer who has a good ability to explain it to you. It's actually going out to the field and talking to customers and helping, just pulling more out of them one-on-one. Or using win-loss tools or whatever, sales tools, anything like that is going to be helpful to just get it does a few things. One is you're building empathy with the customers you really want to help anyway. So that's good. You're getting to understand their language, the way they talk about the problems. This is another gap that a lot of non-technical marketers kind of run into. They understand how they want to talk about the product, but they don't necessarily understand how the users actually talk about the product day to day. And those can be very different depending on the tool and the user. So yeah, getting that language so you sound like you're part of the crowd. You're a developer talking about K3S. Like, what is K3S? If you're not a developer, you don't know that term. Like, of course, and where it comes from. Like, it comes from Kubernetes, and it's like a, sort of the slant on that. So I think like all these language things are probably one of the most intimidating parts about developer marketing in general, and it kind of transfers over to positioning and differentiation as well. So very good.
Also, and sorry to cut in.
Please, yeah.
Something that is super helpful is when we go to conferences. So you get firsthand the feedback from the people that are using the product, what they like, what they don't, what they're missing, and also that's for, at least for me, it's very interesting when I go to KubeCon or something like this, because from while to while comes someone, hey, do you thought about this? It is happening to me. Is like, wow, never thought about this, or never thought that someone. And if you have a product manager around that can see it, and well, that's beneficial for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And people will give you much more nuanced feedback in person than they can give you in an online survey. Because let's be honest, like, you give me that 1 through 10 sliding scale for me to click the button. I click that and I'm like, yeah, works fine. And that, like, I'm too busy. I'm not going to mess with it. But if I run into you, Andres, to your point, at a conference and you're like asking me candid questions about this, I might give you some real specific, like, oh, this was great, but this part I've struggled with and I'm not really feeling like it's all there, or I have to use this tool to compensate. Like, you get this really nuanced feedback that you can't really, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't collect the data. Like, the data is good from certain things, but also it's good to augment it with some of these anecdotal points too. Yeah. Trent, anything to add there?
One really quick thing. I used to get really precious about, what we called even our category. Like, product category can be tricky. We often want to invent a category that perfectly describes what we do and only what we do. Not reality. Like, whatever your customer, whatever they use to label your category is probably what you should run with in your marketing. Like, I used to get really precious about when people call this an ISP. I'm like, we sell way more than just internet. So ISP just doesn't do it justice. Now I've kind of come around to the, I think I said it in my intro that we're an ISP, and we should just own it.
Yeah.
From there, it's just an entry point. That's what you got to realize.
Yeah.
You don't have to have your category be this all-encompassing descriptor.
Yeah. Very good point. And this is actually a good topic discussion too that I'll bring up here is I hear this a lot from especially startups that want to invent a category or be the leader in a category that's brand new that they're kind of coming up with language for. What's the danger in that? Because obviously it sounds good when you can be the owner and creator of a category, but what's the flip side to that? Like, is it realistic? I don't know. Andres, Trent, do you guys have any experience with trying to do that, and has it worked or not worked?
It's very difficult and expensive and time consuming. That's the main problem with it. I think you risk not getting found along with your competitors because you're trying to separate yourselves from them in that way. And I think there's way better ways, way more effective ways to differentiate.
And also you may end reaching your goal and then be like locked down only on this.
Yeah.
So you have to be like to find your sweet spot, right? Not to be like the guys that only do this, not the guys that want to do everything. And that's super complex.
Yeah,
it
is.
That's such a good point. Yeah. You don't want to be at either end of the spectrum. You don't want to be pigeonholed, but you also don't want to be too broad either.
Right. Yeah, I find this a lot with dev tools that are things like replacements for X. So maybe it's a proprietary replacement for Postgres that's Postgres compatible, but it's like, a drop-in replacement, for lack of a simpler term. And often those companies want to either differentiate by being more than just Postgres. We're a database platform or something, when reality is developers are coming to them because they're a different version of Postgres that they want some features from, or some price savings or reduction in maintenance or something. Like, that's the reality, and that they're wanting to build themselves into a category, or they get stuck in like, oh, all we are is a drop-in replacement for Postgres, and that's all people look at us for. And so now it's hard for us to add new features and actually get those sold because they're coming to us for this one reason. Very delicate balance. And I don't know if I have the answer to this. I'd be curious if you guys have found a good middle ground and where that lands for you, or maybe in your current companies, like where do you guys land, and what have you discovered works for you?
Well,
This is a tough one for
for
us.
me,
Go ahead.
I
Go
think
ahead, Andres.
it's probably tough for everybody, but
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Andres, and we'll let
I
Trent.
can speak about, for instance, for Rancher. Rancher is always been as a manager for managing
And Rancher is
Kubernetes.
a product of SUSE's, by the way, just for those who aren't
Ah,
familiar.
sorry,
But
it's
yeah, all good.
Rancher is it's what I like to call it like a Kubernetes management platform, because it allows you to do management and simplify the management, but it allows you doing much more. And we found ourselves a little bit on Rancher is just for doing the Kubernetes stuff. It allows you to do much more, and we've been adding tons of new features and new value to Rancher, and that's why Rancher Prime was born, to help you solve more problems and not be just the Kubernetes thing. So yes, I've been there, and it's not easy. It's a difficult spot to be in, to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Trent, how about you?
Yeah, I guess the way I think of it, I mean, our context is as a telco, we have a broad portfolio. We're talking, I alone cover probably 35 different products. And so there's quite the range of use cases there, and comparisons that could be made fairly from one product to the next with our competitors. And so, and because our solution is very horizontal, right? It's hard to verticalize it. Everyone needs connectivity of some sort, and there's always more than one way to skin the cat. But I think that what I try to go for is having enough meat for there to be a substantive discussion about the problem and how we address the problem, our capability. I think my favorite thought leaders in this space are probably Anthony Pieri and Rob Kaminsky, and they do a consultancy called Fletch. Little shout out to them. They harp on this about how you can't say you solve a problem that's like 3 or 4 layers away from what you actually do.
Right.
Don't just say, "Hey, use our tool and you'll grow revenue." Like everyone says that. You have to,
Yep.
but you don't just say just the immediate thing that it does. You also show like, hey, and because you can do X, that makes Y easier. I don't know. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's a really good point. Is leaning. This is in positioning terms. We often talk about features versus benefits, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at there. I think this is a really, this is actually kind of a debatable point in developer marketing, because I've heard people argue that, look, don't sell developers on benefits, like show them what the tool does, like hard and fast, like be focused on features. And I think there's probably a time and place for that kind of makes sense in certain contexts. Like by showing them, they'll get the benefits, or they at least will be able to see how the product works and see if that works for their workflow and the way they like to live their life. On the other hand, there is a lot of people that will tell you to push hard on the benefits and kind of not to gloss over the features, but to like put that down below the fold, so to speak, so that like you're primarily focused on this will save you 20 hours a week in time or whatever, whatever the headline number is. I don't know the answer there. And I think this is a really interesting debate in the space of developer marketing and in marketing in general, because these tools are being, bought by pretty skeptical people. And when you just tell them big highlight numbers, I can see where that's I'm a little, I don't know about that, I don't know. Where do you guys fall on that spectrum of talk all about the features to talk all about the benefits, a little of both? Like what's the reasonable place to land?
I think you got a classic marketing term. Which level are you talking to? Is it the user? Is it the signatory? Is it the C-suite person that actually approves the purchase? I think, the higher up you go, the more they tend to want to hear about outcomes and that your product can help create. The sweet spot, maybe just above features and benefits, would be what Anthony and Rob talk about: capabilities. What does this product actually allow you to do that you couldn't do without it? So that's kind of what I try to aim for like a user. That's who you're typically selling to, like on a homepage and in marketing collateral and in a pitch call. That first call, especially, you're saying, what's different? What can you do now that you couldn't do before because of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You have to adapt the message depending who you're talking to. So it's not the same language you use with a technical person who is doing the job every day that with some kind of director. The language is different, and also to let's say technical person, you can show features and then explain the value,
Mm-hmm.
and they are able to link it on their head because they do that every day. However, you cannot go to a CTO and tell him, "Hey, these are all the features.
Yeah.
How this
Look
help
at
me?
this screen. Isn't this cool? Yeah.
How this saves me money? How this
Right.
help my guys to
Right.
be more effective?
Yep.
Go and tell me how you can help me."
Yep.
So it's
This is a
depending on the
yeah.
audiences.
This is a really good, and this makes the problem of positioning even harder, because now we're talking about we have to have multiple types of positioning and ways we talk about our product, and a different elevator pitch essentially for each audience who is involved. And as we know in developer tools, it is very often a multi-party sale. It's very I would say there's an old school extreme, which was you always sold top down to the C-suite, implement, like, picked which vendors they were going to go with, and they sort of pushed it out to the whole company. And sure, some companies still work that way, but that's becoming more and more rare. Now it tends to be a blend of some top down, but also some bottoms up, because you got to make sure people actually adopt the tool, and you have to make sure that developers who are in charge of signing off on it will sign off on it. How do you guys figure out, like, how to get those messages in front of the right people? You mentioned, like, the homepage might be focused on this, but we've probably got do you have separate landing pages for each audience? Do you have different collateral packages you kind of use with each audience? I'm curious in specific tactics, like what I can take away to kind of learn and sort of make sure that, yeah, I don't know, that we can reach the right people with the right messages.
We tend to orient ourselves around use cases. And not so much vertical. Like I said before, we're very horizontal solution. Although there are some use cases that are vertical specific, so naturally it lends itself to that. But yeah, landing pages can be a great way. More targeted email outbound can be useful. Having a set of case studies on our homepage or on our website, as well as in our pitch decks, that are naturally, very, very detailed. They get down into the nitty gritty of like what the problem was and what the solution was, and then the outcomes created. That can be very illustrative. I found more and more of our salespeople sometimes even lead with a case study. Like that's the first thing out the gate. They just want to tell a story.
Yeah. Interesting. Andres, how about you? What do you,
Yes.
yeah, what do you think?
Well, in our case, we try to have this top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. And I'm a technical guy, so I do basically bottom of the funnel, a little bit of middle. I do demos. I talk in conferences. I try to go to the events, speak with developers. Sometimes also I go visit customers. Not that often, but also I do it from while to while. And let's say I have a different audience than my counterpart, the product marketing manager, who usually is doing a little bit more middle and top of the funnel. And there's also, you have to cover all the spectrum with different material for different audiences. And for me, the hardest thing is try to be consistent on the messaging, because you try to be more technical, but also you want to somehow keep, let's say, showing the value proposition, right? That your counterpart has come with, and we're going with that value proposition. So you have to somehow showcase that in your demos, in your articles, and that's always a little bit tricky. But I think you need to cover all the angles for different audiences, because as you were explaining, um, before was top down, but nowadays, the opinion of the developers has a huge impact on what is being used, and over on top on small companies. If it's a huge company, maybe it's a little bit more different, but it's a small company in startup, what the developers want to use and what they say, it's really, really important, and can be a direction changer or even a deal breaker.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've been
absolutely.
there working as a solution architect, and I've seen a deal going down because there was no adoption, or a renewal
Right.
going down because there was no adoption. The developers never were properly introduced to the product,
Yeah.
and you don't want
Yeah,
to go there.
I was going to say adoption is the thing that I hear most, where, a company we work with has maybe made a big sale to a big company, but then after year one, only 20% of users have actually like signed on and actually used it on a regular basis. And the company's going to go, well, we're not going to do that again. Like that's a clear loser. And it's very hard because the sale doesn't stop at the sale. The sale stops when everybody has actually implemented it. And devs are, again, notoriously kind of independent and want their own tool chain and their own way of working. And you get these little silos and clusters of people that work one way and others that don't. You just can't mandate it all top down anymore. Again, it's even in big companies, this is not really realistic. So with something else though that kind of this brings up for me is how do you guys are pretty close to both the product, the customer, and the messaging. And so you're in this unique advantage where like you actually can kind of see how to adapt your messaging to the customer, probably better than a lot of people in the org. How do you make sure everybody who's involved in the sale, whether it's the salespeople, the executives that support them, the marketing people, the customer support people, how do they get this messaging and kind of awareness of how to talk to the right people in the right way? Is there any, have you guys figured out a magic way to get that information disseminated? Is there like a way to make this more consistent? Like this is probably not, there's probably no answer because as an org gets bigger, it's harder and harder, but I'm just curious if you've picked up any tricks as to how to get everybody on the same page with how we position and talk about the product.
One thing I've seen to be very helpful is a buyer journey map. So highlighting that and then saying, all right, we're going to zoom in on this section. And then everyone kind of knows what's already happened, what's expected to happen after that section. But then it allows you to get into the details and, like you're saying, be more cross-functional. I really like to think of this as a team sport, not just the product part, but also just the entire go-to-market motion. And even with telecom, I think in many cases, the stuff after the sale is sometimes even more important than what happens before the sale. But yeah, a buyer journey map can really help just get everyone on the same page.
I like that. Andres, anything to add there?
No, I think that's great. We try to involve our on top starting from the launch, trying to involve everyone in the launch. So product management, sales, product marketing, technical marketing, have everyone marketing generic, having everyone on board, having everyone preparing the launch, and having everyone in the same page. So when you're launching your new release, everyone knows what is important, what we need to highlight, and obviously just right after the launch or around the time of the launch, enabling your sales engineers, your sales people, so everyone keeps consistent on the message, on what's new, and again, not it's super easy to lose trust from a customer or from a developer. It's so hard to win that trust. So making sure that everyone is consistent in that message will help you to or retain or gain that trust. But
yeah, I mean, you just said it, Andres, and I totally agree. Trust is the name of the game here because at the end of the day, developers are doing a pretty high stakes job. It's easy to think of them as, code monkeys. We're just ticking away on a keyboard, but like the reality is we're building these software products that makes millions and billions of dollars for people, and small bugs in code can come out in very big ways at the end of the pipeline. And so we are, as software developers, the ones, most of us care about our work and we mostly really want to get it right. And we don't want the tools to be a impediment or a risk for us. So often we're trying to constantly de-risk things. And one of the ways I honestly remember doing this with vendors, like asking multiple people at the vendor what their tool does well, what their shortcomings were, what how you compare to some other things. And if I get consistent answers, I'm a lot more interested in this company. And I think I build up more trust than if I get inconsistency and a lot of like pandering where I can tell they're just trying to make me hear what I want to hear. And it's not consistent across different departments because they're just trying to make the sale. Like again, that's how I would have approached it as a developer. Like I can imagine a lot of developers are pretty similar. So super important, but very hard to pull off the consistency across many different parts of the org. And we're getting in towards the last few minutes here. So if you are listening and live and you want to ask some questions, feel free to drop anything in the Q&A. If we haven't covered an area of differentiation and positioning that you think would be interesting to get into, please feel free to leave it in there. I've got a few more questions. I'll keep going, but would love to get any audience input. And if we don't have any, I've got plenty of things to fill our time. So we just got a few more minutes, but I will, I kind of do a little bit of a pivot here. Andres and Trent, both of you guys and I caught up yesterday individually, and one of the things I think it came up in both of our conversations for sure, is the idea that differentiation is about picking a niche, a thing that your product can, like either a use case or a reason people would pick your product over another that is specific to a certain problem set or industry or something, right? You got to find some way to differentiate there that's a niche. But the challenge people often run into is if you pick a niche that's too small, you may not have a real company there. You've got like a, a cool idea. So if I built the very best log monitoring tool for people building pet tracking applications. There are 4 customers in the world, and it could be the best tool in the world, but like there's just not enough market there. So how do I know? How do I ride that line of going niche and picking somebody like a space where there's going to be a reason for people to adopt this and listen to me because I'm so specifically tuned to them versus going too small and too narrow? And my extreme example of log tools for pet pet tracking apps is that extreme. Any thoughts on that? Anything you've done well or not done well in this area that you'd be willing to share?
Less from my experience here at Console Connect, but more just generally speaking. I think with a startup context, it's very hard to go too small just because your natural tendency, you'll very, very quickly figure out that it's too small. And so, removing one of those modifying elements and just expanding your opening the aperture just a little bit can be sufficient. And so it's sometimes better to err on the side of too specific because let's say you get all 4 of those customers, you've got a beachhead, you've got revenue coming in, you can then expand. But I think like you do have to do some analysis, do some back of the napkin math, and I love the approach of like learning about your TAM by selling. Like Rob Snyder is a great thought leader in this area where he says, finding product market fit. In order to truly do that and accelerate that process, you want to actually try to sell, get people to pay you for what you have or what you're going to have, even if it means doing manually what you say will be automated.
Yep. I just said this to somebody the other day who was asking me about like, how do I figure out if my TAM is big enough, if there's enough customers here for this to be worthwhile? And I said, have 100 sales calls. If you can't find 100 sales calls, like it's probably too small. I mean, again, the numbers depend on the size of your product and all this stuff, but just like if this is very back of the napkin, and it also, I think it tells you a few things. It'll tell you, one, how accessible is the market, but also is there enough there, and is there demand for what we're offering? This is really 101 as far as like early stage. But I do think it's interesting because even at big companies, we see this with launching products that are maybe too specific or too general. And it's very hard, even if you're a company with a couple thousand employees, to go launch a competitor to something Amazon already does. And so if you just launch it as we're the best alternative to Lambda, I mean, okay, you can say that, but like you're still like kind of fighting a big giant in the room. Like, how are you different? How are you better? Who's this better for? Like, figure out something there that you can kind of stand aside so you don't have to compete head to head to head. I don't know, Andres, anything you've noticed with when it comes to positioning and kind of carving out a niche that actually is big enough and worthwhile?
I think it's as Trent said, start small, but make sure that you're starting in a niche or a market segment where you can grow.
Yeah.
So go to talk to people, either phone calls, sales calls, whatever, but you need to get the info from customers, real info, so you can evaluate if you're picking the right niche or you're just going to a cul-de-sac, I think it's called in English.
Yeah.
So make yourself available to have calls, chats, go to events, talk to people, and make sure that you're covering a real problem. If you try to compete with Amazon or whatever huge company that's already doing that, you're getting yourself into a bad starting position. Try to solve something that they don't, and maybe from there you can start growing. If they are there, it's because there is a market. So start small, solve a problem that no one does, and then maybe you can scale up.
Yeah.
maybe.
I think another angle at this that I see observationally with a lot of our clients that are smaller companies is a lot of them will start off with their first 10 to 100 customers are basically people in their network. And they had no commonality, no necessarily like they weren't necessarily like targeting an industry or targeting a certain type of user or whatever. It was just like I told all my friends I'm building this tool and a few of them signed up and now we've sold a few, and like great. I actually think that's a very viable way to start testing different niches and start to see like where do the use cases come up, because a lot of times developer tools can be a product looking for a user or a real need. And so if you get people who are willing to actually use the product and give you feedback, start to notice like, okay, where's their concentration? What are the common needs they have, or the common problems, the reasons they are using this tool versus another one? And if it's just because they're your friend, there might be a problem there. But if there's a little more to that, which usually there is, then you probably have like that might be your first niche to conquer and go double down on that for a while. And then, like you guys said, broaden over time. There's nothing that says you can't take off those limiters, those modifiers, as you call them, Trent, which I think is a good way to think about it. Yeah. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about content itself and how it relates to this positioning. One of the challenges I see a lot of our clients have, including on the work we do with clients, is making sure that content is sort of positioning the company, but also not slamming the customer and the reader over the head with, and we are X and we're so great, so make sure you pick us. So where's the subtle balance between providing actually helpful content that makes the user aware that your product exists and it's a viable solution and it has good, a good reason to start to explore it, versus overselling and pushing too hard, especially with the developer audience, because again, we know these people are a little more skeptical. Where do you guys strike the balance there?
Well,
You want to go first,
go?
Chris?
Okay. What I've seen in the past is, first of all, don't start speaking ill about others. I've seen this in my market segment so many times. Second, don't lie. So don't lie about what you can achieve or what others do. That will destroy your credibility. No one will trust anything you have to say. So try to be truthful, try to go and show what you do best than your competitors. And no, because I say so is not enough, not good enough. Because many marketing you say out there is we are the best, and you try to find the why, and there is no why. It's because I say so. No, that doesn't work, and even less with developers. So go and show your value, show what you do best than others. And yes, you have to compare with your competitors because the market is like that, and you have to show what you do best. But don't go and talk bad and or just don't sell what others do.
Yeah.
Just show
I,
why you are better.
I love this because this is touching on two of my biggest pet peeves in content, which is we write a really deep, good technical piece of content that's actually helpful to engineers. And then somebody from, some team somewhere looks at it, an executive or marketing person, they say, but it doesn't really push our product. Can we just add a paragraph here about how great our product is? And it's like totally unnatural, doesn't fit at all, like completely irrelevant, but like got to make sure it's in there, and it's like, look, guys, they're on the website. They know what product this is pushing, you know what I mean? Like, and if you need calls to action, put them in the sidebar, put them in the whatever. Like, I get all that, but like there's got to be some, like, you want to tear the whole piece's authenticity down just because you want to have a paragraph that mentions this cool new feature you have that's totally unrelated. So that's my first pet peeve. The second one is not wanting to mention competitors. Like, people aren't aware that there are other tools out there, you know what I mean? Like, it's, again, this is an audience who is researching things and wants to be educated, not sort of deceived and pretending like there isn't a gorilla in the room or like a common solution to this already out there, is like, it's just naive. It shows you're a little naive or you're trying to be deceptive, one or the other. And I know there's lots of times corporate reasons that, you can't talk and I'm not even saying speak bad about them. I'm just saying it's like a pet peeve of mine because if I read that kind of stuff, I would be bothered by it. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents. Trent, I'm sure you've got other thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, how much more time do we have? I
Yeah.
could go for a while.
Unfortunately, only 8 minutes, so we don't have unlimited time. But yeah,
No, I thought your points, your pet peeves, they resonate a lot with me. You can't expect the front door of your house to show the kitchen, right? Like you can't expect your website to do the job of an entire sales cycle. That's just unrealistic. And number two, I think, pretending that your competitors don't exist is like an ostrich putting their head in the sand, right? You have to, at least at some stage in your sales cycle, acknowledge that they exist and how you're different from them. But I think one of the things I thought of more to your original question was around kind of just how do you make context applicable? And so one of the things that I learned early on in product management that has really stuck with me is you should care more about your customers' metrics than your own. Not that you don't care about your own, but like care even more about theirs. So if that's your focal point and you're trying to help them move the metrics that they care about, you'll naturally gravitate towards
your
stuff
metrics will
that's
get better.
valuable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. That's a really great point, Trent. I love that kind of service mindset in general of, like if we serve our customers and they improve whatever their metric is, that will lead to renewals. It will lead to upsells. It will lead to referrals. It will lead to all the things that we ultimately want. And so it's this great leading metric of like, are we going to succeed? If customers are succeeding because of us, yeah, why not? I mean, again, unless you really drop the ball, there's no reason. Cool. Well, guys, last
And
little bit here. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, please, Andres.
Then you will get the best marketing ever. Is a customer speaking about you.
Customer marketing.
Sorry to
Yes,
interrupt.
exactly.
I have to say this.
No, you're great way to close the loop. And I think this is again, like you're saying, I totally agree. Like what you really want, like we're doing all this effort to position and market and talk about ourselves, but like what you really want is that flywheel of customers going and talking about you in a great way and talking about your positioning and talking about how you're different. Like that's when you're like, oh, I think we figured it out, Cool. Well, guys, this has been fun as always. Last little thing, anything you got to plug? Andres, I think we talked about application collection, Rancher desktop, some cool stuff you guys are working on. Give me a little bit of a quick pitch on that.
Well, I think if there is developer audience here, they will know that Rancher Desktop is an application that you can install in Mac, Windows, Linux, and it will help you to have like a local environment for developing a local Kubernetes cluster that will help you doing your job easier and with less conflict. And application collection is something that is really great that our team at SUSE are doing. Basically, they're getting all the software that the developer can use or want to use, like Postgres or whatever, kubectl, and instead and go and pull it from any registry without any control, without knowing what the heck are you installing. You get an image secured without CVEs, with software build of materials. You know exactly what is there. You standardize and you make sure that everyone is using the same tools the same way. And also at the same time, you make sure that security teams are happy.
Very good. Yeah, I love how far the Rancher and Kubernetes ecosystem in general has come. I remember 5 or 10 years ago when I was first trying it out, we were spinning up individual containers and linking them, and it's come a hell of a long way from there. It's a lot of fun to watch. Rancher's been a fun product to watch evolve and get better. So, and then Trent, you launched a podcast recently. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's called Bits, Bytes, and Beyond. It's a kind of a company podcast, and we're taking a non-sales approach to it. I like to say, like much more technically focused. We break down a problem and then explore how it can be solved. I have guests on there where it's not just our point of view, but more of an industry point of view.
Cool.
And I'd say like anyone who works on anything infrastructure, go check out consoleconnect.com. We have a platform. It's free. You can create a login and self-serve, get pricing, get quotes, explore a bunch of our portfolio, and there's a lot of really helpful info on our blog as well.
Awesome. Well, I hope to see both you guys at an event soon. I know we all end up going to a lot of the same kinds of events, so maybe we'll run into each other. If not, this has been a lot of fun. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll have links to all the things mentioned, resources mentioned, a lot of high-level notes as well in the comment section or wherever your notes of wherever you're watching this or listening. And then if you ever need help with technical content, I'm always happy to chat, whether it's just asking questions and advice and you want to hear other stories. That's always something I can share. I can share your resources, or you want to actually start working with Draft.dev on any production or ongoing content strategy and analytics. But otherwise, thanks for joining me, guys. Great to talk to you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.